Well, we've got an interesting update in the ongoing multi-decade battle between the victims, or the families of 9/11 victims, and the U.S. government. The families of the 9/11 victims have for years been trying to fight for the government to get to get the information that the government has on 9/11, so that they can understand, fully what happened to their loved ones. Or in some cases, I think that there are some, survivors that are involved in this group too. So in, some cases, it's people who actually were, victims of the 9/11 attacks. And everyone in America, basically knows in the back of their mind that Saudi Arabia had a lot to do with it. Of course, what was it? 15 of the 9/11, hijackers were Saudi citizens or subjects. Sorry, it's a kingdom, so they're subjects. And beyond that, we know that these Saudis, various Saudis who have not really been identified until now, were in contact with a lot of the hijackers, seemed to assist them, give them money. Of course, there was a, here in Florida, there was a Saudi diplomat who had Muhammad Atta and I think one other hijacker staying with him at his home for some time. And Muhammad Atta is on, surveillance video from the, it was a gated community. They have footage of Muhammad Atta, I believe, going in and out of that community, which, you have to have permission from a homeowner, an invite to get through the gate. And of course, after 9/11, that guy skipped town and was never seen again in the United States. And this happened with a number of Saudi officials. And so these families have a list of about 9 people who, worked in the Saudi government at the time, who they think, probably have some decent information on what happened and how their government was involved, and, they'd like to talk to them. And if they can't talk to them, the next best thing is, trying to look at the records of whatever the U.S. government has on these people and their involvement in 9/11, because, you can be damn sure that the FBI looked into this. Well, Michael Isikoff over at Yahoo News has a great write-up on what just happened in this case. Apparently, the FBI mistakenly unmasked a Saudi official who was supposed to be masked, kind of in the same way that Flynn was unmasked. But in this case, it seems to be a genuine accident, because this person's name is blacked out all throughout the document, but there's one place where their name is not blacked out. And this guy was someone who worked in the Saudi embassy in Washington and was sort of the direct link between the Saudi government and these hijackers. At least that's the theory, because the FBI says, oh, well, we don't have enough evidence to say that with certainty, which is total nonsense. That's just political speak. That's them saying, hey, we don't want to go after Saudi Arabia. That's not saying you don't have enough evidence. The U.S. goes after folks all the time without evidence. The U.S. manufactures evidence if they don't have any to use against somebody. I mean, hell, just look at what the FBI did with Flynn. They had nothing against Flynn, so they had to go and make something up by entrapping him. And if the folks at the FBI gave a single damn about justice, they could have entrapped the Saudis just as well if they felt that the Saudis were going after these folks, which and were involved with 9/11, which this report would seem to indicate that that's what the FBI was thinking. Now, of course, just because the FBI, some FBI agents thought that this was the case, does that mean that it's true? No. But this is what the preponderance of evidence that we've seen, since 9/11 has suggested that the Saudis played a pretty darn big role. And even if they didn't, the evidence, it looks so, it looks so incriminating that were the Saudis not, America's closest ally, they would have been found themselves on the wrong end of some Patriot missiles a long time ago. Okay, and since the Saudis, turns out are supposed to be U.S. allies, that's why the U.S. had to go after Iraq and Afghanistan, 2 countries that had nothing to do with 9/11. Some people still today, in a roundabout way, try to tie the Taliban to 9/11 because they say, oh, well, look, Al-Qaeda was living in some mountains, in Afghanistan. It's like Al-Qaeda was all over the world. Don't be a dumbass. There was much more planning for 9/11 going on in Germany and the U.S. than there was in Afghanistan. Should we go blow up Germany too? Should we blow up our own country? Honestly, I wouldn't mind blowing up Washington. Being facetious, of course, it's not a terrorist threat. But yeah, so as a result of the FBI's screw-up here, the 9/11 families actually got a bit of the information that they were looking for. It's interesting. You think about these folks who, publicly, I would think that at least most Republican voters would have a very strong, favorable feelings about William Barr, the Attorney General, and Richard Grenell, the Director of National Intelligence. Both of them have been working very, very hard to make sure that the 9/11 families have absolutely no information about what happened to their families, or to their family members, who died in this terrible act. And they certainly they don't seem to have much sympathy for them. Because, as I said, it's not politically advantageous. If the Saudis were, a so-called rogue state, if Saudi Arabia, had the kind of relationship with the U.S. government that Iran has, then these folks would be all over TV. CNN would have them on every day talking about how bad Saudi Arabia is, and just how much we need to invade that country to get justice for all the 9/11 victims. Okay, because it's without question, we have more dirt because of 9/11 on Saudi Arabia than we have on any of these other countries that have been invaded. There's a greater justification to go blow them up than anybody else. Because Libya, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, these countries never hurt us. And I'm not saying you should go invade Saudi Arabia. I think that'd be a terrible idea. It'd be just as bad of an idea as invading Iraq was, or any of these other places. But all I'm saying is that when they have much better evidence here, and they're saying, well, it's not enough evidence to say anything, so we can't even let you have the information because, that'd be irresponsible because we don't want to defame people. It's total nonsense. The FBI doesn't believe that. The government doesn't believe that. They want to keep you in the dark so that you go on accepting this alliance with an evil state. And I say that as someone who thinks that all states are evil, just to varying degrees. But Saudi Arabia is especially bad. And yet these are the folks that our so-called leaders have chosen to align us with. And, I shouldn't just, level all the blame at Saudi Arabia, because they're one party that clearly has had a lot, to do with this. But also Pakistan, another great U.S. ally. Not as great as Saudi Arabia, perhaps, but there's been a lot of suspicions about them and what was going on, Again, we haven't had a proper investigation into the matter with facts that have been revealed publicly, because, everything about 9/11 has been, covered up beyond the, whatever assisted the U.S. government's narrative at the time, which, again, is why we have so many conspiracy theories about 9/11, which, some of which may or may not be true, like here, this whole thing with Saudi Arabia. If you say Saudi Arabia had any involvement in 9/11, that's considered a conspiracy theory by the government, because they say we don't have enough evidence to say that. So they'd say the same thing about Pakistan or anything else. But, another thing is that if the U.S., if the standard is that Saudi Arabia gets, part of the blame for 9/11 because they funded Al-Qaeda, well then, what do we say about ourselves? Because the U.S. government also funded Al-Qaeda, all through various periods in history, both before and after 9/11. I mean, hell, that's exactly what I was talking about with Flynn. Why they hated Flynn is because Flynn understood that funding Al-Qaeda was a bad idea. And so, we can't have Americans going around condemning countries for funding this group. If you really wanted to be a big populist candidate and try and recapture, what Trump tapped into and then, threw aside as soon as he got elected because he was surrounded by terrible advisors that he picked, by the way. If I wanted to sort of be Trump 2.0, what you would want to do, and this would sell across the board, you would have, bipartisan support. Everyone left and right would be able to, understand and appreciate this kind of a narrative. You come out very simply and say, hey, I'm tired of the U.S. government shooting the American people in the foot. I'm going to go to Washington. I'm going to defund Al-Qaeda and all these other terrorist groups that we fund, make sure that they never get any money again as long as I'm president, and I'm going to go over the CIA's budget with a fine-tooth comb. And of course, we're not even allowed to know how much the CIA spends, let alone what they spend it on. But the president is allowed to know that. And so, what I would do is I would appoint, some really scrupulous accountant to be the director of the CIA, not some spook. And his job would be to go through everything and figure out what the CIA is doing and report that to me. And then I can directly, through him, direct the director to quit doing all this crap. And so then maybe, we'll stop having so many terrorist attacks if the terrorists don't get money from the U.S. because, the U.S. throws a lot of money out there that, goes to terrorists. And even if it doesn't stop attacks here, maybe it'll stop attacks overseas. And while we're at it, maybe we can get into what exactly Saudi Arabia knew and when they knew it about 9/11. And then maybe we can, issue a belated apology to the people of Iraq and Afghanistan for blaming them for something that they had no part in. And, maybe, the president could come out and make a series of speeches arguing why, invading all these other countries because we're mad about 9/11 doesn't make any sense. Invading Syria will not make 9/11 go away. Invading Syria, will not, keep the Islamists at bay. Because again, even though the government, doesn't come out and directly say that, when they talk about invading a Middle East country, it's always tapping into that energy, that anger from 9/11. That's what, gives Americans sort of the right in their eyes to want to see Arab blood in the streets. If we were talking about invading Germany or France and blowing them up, Americans would be appalled by that because, they see them as people. But, 9/11 did a lot to help to dehumanize Middle Eastern people in the eyes of ordinary Americans. And the government has, taken advantage of that. So with all that said, I'm very happy that the 9/11 families continue to press on in trying to, get justice for their loved ones, and I wish them the best of luck in this very long battle that is a long way from being over. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.